Come on, Andor! Come on! Yeah! Yes, come on! After my disturbingly successful videos on the Rings of Power, I received many requests to review other contemporary TV series, most commonly She-Hulk, Andor, or The Rings of Power. Now, I don't ever want to hate watch anything. My brain cells and time are a bit too precious for that. I'm really not the target audience to watch She-Hulk, and I feel that there's zero chance that I might like it, so I'm not gonna watch it. Sorry. I'm also a science fiction guy much more than I'm a fantasy guy. So for now, we're gonna leave out the House of the Dragon as well. Andor, however, is a very different story. I've heard some amazing things about it from our community on Discord, and it also fits my main interest as a writer, which is science fiction. So, how good is Andor and how are we gonna judge it? You see, the difficulty is that Star Wars as a franchise is much more entertainment-focused and action-based than the movies and books in science fiction that I typically watch and read. Because of that, judging Andor as I would usually judge a science fiction work, based on the depth of ideas explored in it, just seemed inappropriate and unfair. It's like judging a forklift based on its ability to crochet a sweater. We needed something better than that. Movies that aim to be entertaining, that try to keep you at the edge of your seat all the time, should be judged specifically on their ability to achieve that. But how? Thankfully, I came up with a revolutionary method to evaluate entertainment-focused movies: the rowing test. I recently got a rowing machine. At the time, I just wanted to add a bit more exercise to my daily routine, and I did not know that it would become a perfect movie review tool. But here we are. The rules of the test are very simple. I watch Andor while rowing at moderate intensity. The minimum time is 15 minutes. At 15 minutes, I am free to continue watching it, but as long as I also continue rowing. If the series is entertaining enough, I'm gonna keep going despite the fact that my muscles are cramping and sweat is dripping down my face. So, what are the results? As you can see, in episode 1 I barely made it over the 15-minute mark. In the second rowing session, I finished episode 1 and rolled over a little bit to episode 2, going slightly over 15 minutes, which is a good sign. The rest of episode 2 went pretty well. I felt like I could have gone a little bit longer, but not long enough to start episode 3. Episode 3 was the best so far. I watched the whole thing start to finish in one session. Currently, I'm on episode 4, which is going quite poorly. I've already had 2 sessions and neither of them went over 15 minutes at all. It was a little bit of a drag. Now, let's see whether the rowing test ratings correlate with online review scores for different episodes. And note that I didn't look them up before doing the tests, so the tests are fully independent. As you see, the correlation is clear and the rowing test is completely validated. So what does the rowing test tell us about Andor? Entertainment-wise, not all episodes are equally good, but the series in general is doing pretty well. Even though I didn't push over my 15-minute minimal threshold every time, the series still kept me wanting to watch more and helped me motivate myself to get back to rowing every day. Now, other than the show's grip strength, how good is it? I was pleasantly surprised and I have a few good things I could say about the show. First, I like that the show pays attention to its antagonists. We get to learn a little bit about each of them. And in my opinion, it adds nuance to the story and makes conflicts more engaging when you kind of root for both sides a little bit. This is, of course, much better than when antagonists are just treated as abstract, faceless bad guys. So, good job, Andor. Second, I like the exploration of the inner workings of a totalitarian state and how it often deteriorates and collapses inward. Having grown up in Russia, I've firsthand witnessed many similar elements, a mixture of bureaucracy, corruption, and ineptitude that often plague totalitarian systems. In this context, I also like that the writers didn't make it too black and white. They show that even in such a corrupt system as the Empire, there's still hardworking, loyal, honest, and even idealistic people. The third thing I liked about Andor is that it did not strike me as obnoxiously political. To clarify, I think exploring different political systems in science fiction is amazing and it's one of the best things about this genre. But I just don't like when things are too tied to modern-day politics. Usually it looks too on the nose and also makes the work lose relevance too quickly. Number 4. The show does take some risks. For example, in the first episode, the main character kills another person in cold blood, breaking the Save the Cat template, where the main character needs to be painted as a nice guy in the beginning. Although, we did see a similar scene in Rogue One, so it's not as risky as it might seem. Lastly, the set design looks quite decent and I kind of like it. The only downside is sometimes it looks a little bit too glossy, too polished, too new. So the wear and tear artist, if there is one, needs to step it up a notch, or maybe needs a few extra hands on his team. Among the downsides, most are relevant to the whole Star Wars franchise and are kind of related to why I'm not the biggest fan of it. First, I don't quite like the tonal inconsistencies. For example, in the first episode, right after this dramatic and grim shooting scene, we get this literal comic relief when some weird dogs are peeing on a droid. I understand why it's done, but for me, it breaks the immersion and makes the whole thing feel stupid. I prefer works that double down on their chosen tone and use a more subtle, more limited palette of expression. One way to do that in this context would be to contrast Andor's cruel actions with his loving and respectful relationships with Mara, instead of showing us dogs peeing on a stammering droid. Another issue is, of course, the cute little merchandise. Of course, again, I understand why it is done, but it is annoying and I think it is distracting from the impression of the series. Lastly, we do get some clumsy writing here and there. The most annoying moment for me so far was when Andor was talking to his droid and the droid was voicing all incoming information for the enemy to hear. There is no reason why the droid could not process the signal internally, other than the writers needed it to voice it out. It would have been much better if we saw the Imperial troops wiretap into the droid's secure communication system or something along those lines. Additionally, of course, there was some expository dialogue, but I think the writers made an effort to mask it pretty decently in most cases. I might sometime make a more in-depth analysis of different scenes in Andor. If you want to see that, please let me know in the comments and support the channel by subscribing or joining me on Patreon or Subscribestar. To wrap up this video, I would like to say that the issues that I've mentioned were not a game changer for me, and I still enjoyed the show. So, if you like a reasonably entertaining sci-fi TV series, or if you're a Star Wars fan, Andor is a solid choice.